Well, welcome to all of you, and you should be seeing the screen coming up now. And just want to double check that everyone's got us live. So it's been a while since I've done a webinar. I basically, myself and Kevin and Michiel and Willem and Paul Niederer and many others in the team have just finished a literally 9-city tour around the world in 3 weeks, which is not that easy, I'm not going to lie. But saying that, we did want to also do a global one because many different people couldn't necessarily be at the events live, and we wanted to be able to do it online so that people could get access to the same information, and then obviously we can share it, you know, no matter where you are in the world. So it's with a huge amount of excitement that we're going to share today, you know, mainly 3 major segments within, you know, what's happening around the world. So the first one is Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and there's a lot of talk about it and what's happening with the fork coming up. If you have no idea what I'm talking about with the fork, I'm sure you'll know pretty soon. And then obviously from Michiel's perspective, the team have been overseas to America, and there's been tremendous opportunities, not only with our current opportunities and the opportunity to do a portfolio sale, but equally, you know, looking at the pipeline of deals and more than $1 billion worth of deals. And Michiel's got some, you know, tricks up his sleeve on how you can, you know, ultimately incentivize every single team member within your organization, as well as own 21 buildings for your children within the next 5 years. And then I'm going to go into the 17 lessons, everything that I've learned, you know, over the last year. Every single year we do our CEO update. And within those lessons, I'm going to share with you major trends that are happening around the world, how you can spot those trends, and ultimately how you can take advantage of our Wealthe coin, which is effectively a cryptocurrency based on real estate. So I'll talk a lot about that a little bit later. So without further ado, I really wanted to just welcome someone, and I don't know if Kim is actually online, but what is really important is that most people that actually saw her live, and she actually is online, so I'm going to quickly make her a presenter as well so you can hear from her. And our entire company has been built by, hang on, if I just, so I'll go back to being the presenter. All that I was trying to do was to add Kim, so Kim should be able to talk now. And basically what I was just saying, can you see my, Michiel, can I just double check, can you see my screen again with the community screen?
Yes, thanks, Scott. We can see you, and you can just unmute Kim, and then she could hopefully speak to you.
Cool. So yes, all that I was really saying there was, you know, from Kim's perspective, and I know Kim, there's lots of background noise there.
Hi, yeah, apologies. It's terrible background noise here.
Can you chat?
Yes, I can, Scott. Sorry if it's not too bad from my side.
No, we'll keep it short. So our entire company is built by our community, for our community, and you know, there's been a couple of us within the team that have really been trying to kind of grow this. But as the organization is growing and as we're going to the next level, Kim has been part of the company. She's really been a stalwart of the company and one of the foundations upon which the culture's been built. And she went off on her own and started one of her, you know, in terms of following one of her own passions. And more recently, in the last couple of weeks, we're very, very excited to welcome her back to actually head up our community, to drive the community, and to really enable people to be able to get more information, get more value. And if there's things that aren't working, or complaints, or, you know, ways that we can enhance or improve the community, you know, Kim really is driving that. And I'm not sure, Kim, if there's anything else that you want to say. But, you know, how would someone reach out to you if there were ideas that they wanted to enhance the community or help out and or suggestions?
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, just to echo what Scott said, I am hoping to be your voice within the company, so I'd appreciate any feedback that you could possibly give to me, as if it's something that we're doing right, how we can enhance that. If there's areas that we can improve on, I'd also really like to hear about that so that we can tweak them and improve our services to our various communities. So my contact details, you can either send me an email at kim@wealthmigrate.com, or my number is 082-619-8198. I'll be available on both of them and be happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Kim. And if anyone wants to jump in the chat box, then you'll be able to just ask any questions, and we'll put Kim's contact details. Kim, if you wouldn't mind just putting them into the chat box there for people as well, so that they've got them. So, guys, without further ado, I really want to take you through the 3 areas like we discussed. We're going to start off with Bitcoin and the future of cryptocurrency. Then we're going to move on to the investment of real estate opportunities, and then we're going to look at the 17 lessons. And together with that, I'm going to tie that into the Wealthe coin. But I think, we don't want to wait any further, and I want to make sure that I know, Michiel, you're online. Willem, are you online, and can we hear you clearly?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you clearly. So it's without further ado that I wanted to welcome Willem. I've known Willem now for the best part of this year. We met this year early in January. We met actually through Henny's daughter that had studied exponential technologies at Stanford and had come across Willem. He's the ex-partner at Deloitte that really was focusing on the Center for the Edge and exponential technologies and flying all over the world and learning about these exponential technologies. If you missed those talks that we've done in the past, I would highly recommend checking them out. They are on YouTube. But really, one of the things that's fascinating people around the world at the moment is Bitcoin. And with that, cryptocurrencies in general and everything that is happening. And, in May, I was at a presentation with Willem, and he was talking about Bitcoin and what was happening. And I have to say, at the time, I wasn't an investor. I now am an investor, so I'm glad that I'm now part of what's happening, both the ups and the downs. But without further ado, Willem, I wanted to hand over to you, where we can really just get a sense of what's happening in the market and what your thoughts are. Do you want me to share the screen and make you the presenter, or how do you want to do it?
We can share screen, yes. I've got some nonsense in the background. Afternoon, everyone. In South Africa, at least afternoon, and hello to everyone else. I am sitting in my car right now, if you can see my screen, and I was very ready and prepped to do this out of a shared space boardroom. Show my screen. There we go. And then the power went out, and so now I had to sprint, which is why I've got rolled up sleeves, and get power from my car and connectivity from my car, because the internet went off as well. So I'm happy that I could make this being only 2 minutes late. Scott, sorry about giving you 2 minutes worth of a hard time there. Thanks for that introduction. Perhaps just on how I had met Henny's daughter, such a small world. I had been doing some work with Singularity University and had befriended Salim Ismail, the author of Exponential Organizations. And we are collaborating on publishing the version of the book for Africa. And I had mentioned this stuff to our then Deloitte COO, Alan Swiggers, who has a son that studies at Stellenbosch, who was standing next to a rugby field, and next to him stood this young lady who happened to be Henny's daughter, and she mentioned that she was struggling with a thesis. He said, "What is it about?" She said, "Oh, I'm doing a measurement of this book for Africa, exponential organizations, and we're trying to see how African organizations stack up." And he said to her, "Well, there's one guy you have to talk to." One thing led to another. I got introduced to her, then to her father, then came on the board meeting, then met Scott, and the rest is history. We've been collaborating ever since then. Funny how connected this world has become, and how digital connection is driving all these moments of interaction sort of at a much higher intensity than what I think we had 10, 30 years ago. Okay, Scott, so I see you've got a poll up here, and people can now make a selection.
The reason being, Willem, is the aim of this webinar is to interact with people, to understand what it is they're looking for, and I thought while you weren't sharing anything on the screen and talking, I would start people engaging their brains in terms of it. The other thing is that while you are talking, if anyone's got any questions, they can just type it in the chat box, which is in the top right corner. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all the questions, and then we're going to run through with yourself and Michiel and myself, and then we're going to go into the Q&A. But please write any questions that anyone wants. So I'm going to close out the poll, and I just wanted to really start engaging with everyone.
Cool. Okay. So I don't really have a structured agenda, so I'm going to let some of the inputs guide me, and Scott, you and I will facilitate the conversation flow. But effectively, when we had these conversations in person, I'll take some of the guidance from those conversation structures as well. The big thing that came up first, of course, is, are we in a bubble? Now, treacherous terrain here, because you don't want to don't want to make predictions because the actual unfolding will, of course, show who's right and who's wrong, and that's luck. And so, I'm not a betting man, and I don't want to venture out onto a limb here. But let's look at some fundamentals that are relevant to this dynamic of digital currencies, and then everyone, having had the benefit of hearing those fundamentals, can decide which ones they believe and make their own price adjustments. So let's not answer, is there a bubble or isn't there a bubble? Let's look at how is the price of digital currency being determined. And possibly the best way to do this is to say, let's draw the analogy to gold. Gold bullion. What determines, and answer this for yourself, what determines the value of gold? It's something that we take out of the ground, that we learned to mine, that was shiny when we first saw it, probably in sifting pans and rivers somewhere, probably near California, the gold rush. We decided to ascribe a certain value to it, which I argue is a sentimental value. If you're married and if you did a gold ring, the ring on your finger, the fillings in your teeth, some semiconductor conducting capability, low impedance. But in the main, we liked this shiny thing, and we ascribed a value to it. And for a long time, it underpinned, of course, the strength of currency, the gold standard, which we abandoned, incidentally, many, many years ago. So the only reason why gold has a value is because over time, we've developed this sentiment about it. And when there's chaos in the world, Trump mentions nuclear, or Korea does another military expose, showcasing of power, people run to where it's safe. What is safe? It is something that we perceive. It is a state that we perceive. And again, that's made up in all of our minds individually. There's no definition for it and no empirical evidence that supports it. So we buy gold and we value gold on the back end of certain chemicals that are present in our brains, which ultimately, if you think about it, we're all cyborgs because we're programmed to act in a certain way when there are certain states of mind, which is determined by chemicals. Okay, so that's how we buy. Is there a limitless supply of gold in the world? No, there isn't. There's a finite amount. So we've got a limited amount of a certain thing that we all like, and the more people that run after it, depending on what happens in the world and the macro environment all around us, more people want it. If there's a finite amount and the demand increases, Adam Smith, 101 economics, the price shoots through the roof. Okay, so those are facts, empirical facts, as to how the world around us is constructed in the context of gold today. Now, what about digital currencies, digital gold? Let's look at, and incidentally, for the newcomers to the crypto space, welcome. There are more than 2,000 different types of cryptocurrency that you can buy today. So you are spoiled for choice. The big ones include Bitcoin, which is the most well-known one, and the one with currently the biggest market cap. And I'll check on some of these statistics as I'm rolling them out to you in real time during the course of this conversation. Now, there's a finite amount of Bitcoin in the world. It runs on a blockchain. The algorithm of which determines that there can only ever be 21 million Bitcoins ever. The last million Bitcoins, given how this algorithm is constructed, take about 100 years to mine. Okay, now you can start drawing the parallels back to gold bullion, the physical value store. Finite amount. Now let's look at some other interesting stats on the demand side. There is an estimation that in January of this year, between 10 and 15 million people on the planet participated in the purchase of cryptocurrency, of which about 82% was specifically Bitcoin. By July of this year, that number had increased to between 65 and 75 million. It's an exponential growth rate. It's estimated that right now, November, we've got more than 100 million people purchasing cryptocurrencies, of which the overwhelming majority is buying Bitcoin. So if you have a finite amount of a particular thing that in itself has no value other than the value that we ascribe to it based on sentiment and whatever our chemical composition dictates, and more people are starting to run after it, what happens to the price? Okay, you can draw that parallel. as we see with gold price in times of crises, we're seeing not necessarily out of crises. I think it's a different sentiment. It's probably greed. We see more and more people are starting to run after digital currency, specifically Bitcoin. And that's, of course, why we see this massive growth rate in the price. Now, ask yourself this. If you are trying to ascertain the bubble propensity, how many people does it take to start a trend? Why is a trend followed? I used this analogy in, actually I didn't plan to use it, but in the real life conversations we had, I said that it's like standing in the Masai Mara looking at a herd of wildebeest, where everyone's casually standing, enjoying the sun, probably the non-proximity of lions, and grazing really good grass from very fertile soil. And inherently, we all know we're going to move at some stage. And then, I don't know, maybe there's a fly or a bee or a tick, and one wildebeest gets a little bit agitated and starts to move a little bit to the left to get out of the scope of where this fly is operating. The wildebeest next to that wildebeest is looking at this and saying, oh shit, I think he's moving. Maybe he knows something that I don't. And he takes a couple of steps as well. The 5 wildebeest around the second wildebeest look at that and also start to move a little bit. And before you know it, this wave of trend takes over and we have the great migration. And I think our human sentiment operates in a similar manner when it comes to things that we don't necessarily fully grasp the concept of, but certainly feel the consequences when the broad-based trends start to manifest in our lives. In this case, something that's very dear to all of us, which is personal wealth. So there's always a risk of a run on the money, either to buy more or to get rid of. And as a consequence, are we in a bubble? I say we're always in potential bubble territory, always. You know, the broad-based 101s of economics dictate that all investors have got access to equal quality information. And second principle is that all investors are rational. We all don't understand Bitcoin 100%. I don't understand Bitcoin 100%. Scott doesn't understand it 100%. Satoshi Nakamura, who made the bloody thing, doesn't understand it 100%. So first principle, flawed. Second principle, do we have not access to equal information? Second principle, rather, are we rational? No, we're not. We're not. We're human beings. Emotion is what makes us human. So no, we're not rational. We are sometimes emotional, whether it comes to being fearful, an emotion of running away from the possible crash, or greedy, an emotion, and trying to accumulate more wealth, which means that we are in perpetual bubble propensity or potential, always. Okay, so I've drawn some parallels there to understand the pricing structures. It's a very colloquial analogy, so I'm sure we can pick some verbiage flaws in it, but in the main, that's how the price is determined. If I say to you that there are 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, depending on which census you believe, only 100 million, double it, call it 200 million people are already playing in this space. What do you think needs to happen to the price?
Willem, something you said very interesting was at the beginning of this year, it was only 30 or 40 million, and it's already gone to 100 million. So it's already effectively, you know, gone up 2.5 times this year. Is that, I seem to remember you saying those stats last week, yeah?
Even bigger. So we started the year on about 10, 15 million. We're now at about 100. 10x.
Okay. So I mean, almost 10x in the last 12 months.
That's right. That's right. So,
and I just want to put that in the context with what you're now asking, and with even what's happened with the price rise, because there's basically just been more demand coming into the market.
Well, that's exactly it. If there are 8 billion people, possible total theoretical demand, and up until now, we've seen the price movement in the way that we've seen it with only 100 million people. Even if you were to double it and say 200 million people are playing in this space, even if you quadrupled it and you said 400 million people are already playing in this space, can you see the differential between the number involved now and the potential theoretical number? Now, naysayers and pragmatists will say there will never be 8 billion people that have digital currency because there aren't even 8 billion people that have normal money. I take that point. Where do we draw that line? Let's say only half the population of the planet will have access to this, which I think is overly conservative. The number will be bigger than that. But let's, for the theoretical argument, suggest that. Let's say it's 4 billion people that could have demand. If 50% of that, which is a low number, get access to it, it's 2 billion people. Divide our very other conservative estimate of 400 million participants, which it isn't, 400 million into 2 billion. That is another 5-fold increase on the demand. When we went from 10 million people to 100 million people, the price increase over the last year has been 1,000%, depending on what the current price is. I looked just before this conversation started, in preparation before the power went out, it was 921%. So if you have a 921% price increase on a 10x user base, can you imagine what it's going to be when we go from 100 million people to 4 billion people? So I think a cryptocurrency valuation is short of 2 zeros behind the current price. Here's the curveball. Will it be Bitcoin? We've got 2,162 alternatives as regards the types of cryptocurrencies that are available to put money into today. And in a couple of days, we're going to have the much talked about fork inside of the blockchain that underpins Bitcoin as we know it today. Incidentally, that's going to be like the 8th or 9th fork. There have been many, many before this one. The most well-known one before this that gave rise to Bitcoin Cash. Talk about that in a second. But to just end the theme of the pricing, and again, I caveat this, no one knows the future. If we did, none of us would work. So take it under that caveat, please. But on the principles of it, which coin will it be? I'm not sure. Bitcoin, as it is, runs on a 1 meg line. SegWit2, this fork, let's talk about that a little bit, is trying to increase the block size to 2 megabytes. The idea behind it is to, in principle, save cost and increase speed of using the blockchain for transactions, so that can be adopted by the 8 billion people on the planet. The Bitcoin Cash fork has already taken that blockchain to an 8 megabyte block. So a lot of proponents, including our Exponential Technology Institute faculty member, Lorian Gamarov, who is a big name in the Bitcoin space, advising, amongst others, the SARB on sandbox regulation to deal with cryptocurrencies, reckons that Bitcoin and the new Bitcoin are both irrelevant next to Bitcoin Cash. So he's a big proponent of Bitcoin Cash. Personally, I'm not sure.
He shared that live with all the Wealth partner guests in Durban last week.
No, that's right. Lorian is an outspoken guy. That's why we like him. He speaks his mind, even if he doesn't agree with us. Which in this case, he doesn't agree with us. Probably his view is more informed than mine. But it's also a technical view versus a sentiment view. And remember the second principle of economics, we're dealing with irrational, emotive humans that will determine the ultimate uptake or not. Is Lyft or Uber the best ride-sharing company? And for those of you that are online, that have used the Lyft service before, personally, I think Lyft is a better service than Uber, but the humans chose Uber. Is it rational? No. Is it the bigger company? Yes, by multitudes. So we can't predict this. He thinks it's Bitcoin Cash technically. I think the following, and I used this example in Johannesburg. For those of you that are South African and understand our local sport, let's think of a sport icon, Joost van der Westhuizen. He was the scrum half. In the American context, he would be like a Matt Leinart while he was playing for USC in the NFL College League. Not the NFL, in the College League. All right. So Joost passes a ball to Derek Hoogaard. We're playing Western Samoa. He passes the ball very, very high. Derek Hoogaard tries to catch it. His hands are above his shoulders. He's unprotected. Brian Lima, a world-renowned center, renowned for his brutalness in his defensive capability, puts his shoulder into the short ribs of Derek Hoogaard. He deflates him entirely, and he basically plasters him flat with the floor. The crowd gasps. Will Hoogaard live? Not how badly injured is he, because this was fatal, and how it looked from the stands. Medics and team members surround Derek Hoogaard, and they pat him on the face, and they try to sprinkle some water on his face, and eventually there's a twitch of the foot, and he kind of gets a little stiff leg with a foot twitch happening, and the crowd are so happy because Derek Hoogaard is alive. Eventually he gets to his feet, and the crowd get to their feet and give him a standing ovation for surviving the brutalness of this attack. And he finishes the match. And everyone realizes what a tough guy Derek Hooghart is and what a national hero he becomes, to the extent that when he lost his kicking tee 3 weeks later, there was a national search that was launched by society to help find Derek Hooghart's kicking tee. Derek Hooghart is Bitcoin in a bubble. The first time that there was a price crash was 4 years ago, when it went from, I think it was 1,000 South African rand back down to 400 rand, or those sort of dynamics. The price lost 50% of its value, and it was coming off a low base, and everyone said Derek Hooghart is dead, Bitcoin is dead, it was a fad, and it's this unfulfilled promise and a series of unfulfilled expectations. And then it rose, and we kind of like that, because we like the underdog making a comeback. And then we learned that this thing is not regulated by a central bank, and governments can't control it, and we're hurtful, we're sick and tired of government telling us what to do as societies. Think Arab Spring and a lot of other emotion that converges in the determination of the fate of this instrument. And more tackles that the Bitcoin took. Oh, hang on. Something's happened to my connection here.
Yeah, we still got you. You've just lost your screen.
Okay, let me just turn the share. There we go. Am I back?
Yep.
Okay, I'm like Derek Hooghart, I made a comeback. And every time that the currency made a comeback after one of these big tackles where the price fell out, psychologically, we've been building an affinity with this instrument. And so my sense is that the more hardships that Bitcoin goes through from a price perspective, the more and more society at large will learn that it is a store of value, or will perceive it as a store of value. And when psychologically we make that choice to say, actively or passively, that this is a store of value, we're right. It becomes a store of value. It's like quantum physics. Because you look at something, you change the state thereof. It's like the Henry Ford thing. If you believe you can, you're right. If you believe you can't, you're right. It's about your belief. Some of the fundamental underpinnings of this. Okay, so let's quickly talk about the fork. It's effectively a technology change. It doesn't change the fundamentals of cryptocurrency or of digital currency. And a lot of investors have asked me, what do you do with this? Now, I don't give investment advice, and I'm still having the debate as to what my personal set of actions are going to be. But if this split in the chain, like the last time there was a split in the chain, gives rise to a new currency, then if enough miners follow this new currency, such as to give it gravitas, and I'll talk about how they make that decision in a second. Scott, please do remind me to come back to that. But if enough miners follow the new currency so that there is a split and the new currency is supported, then exchanges will support it and it will become tradable. So effectively, if the same thing if the same thing happens this time as what happened last time, you'll get money for free. You'll get another digital currency at the same moment as the new blocks start to be mined. Now, incidentally, the block number is, I think it's 474984 will be the last block mined on the old way, and from 85 will be the new way. And we think that that's going to be between the 14th and the 16th of November. So, if you are in the current ledger at the time of 474984, then from 85 you will have, if you had 10 bitcoins, you'll have 10 of the new bitcoins as well. And then the question is which one of the coins will be supported, because the options are that the old one is the supported one and the new one is created but fizzles into nothing. The second option is that the old one is not supported anymore, the new one is supported, the old one fizzles into nothing, and the value follows the new one. And then the third option is that nothing happens. And there are some really cool websites that talk about fork outcome possibilities and probabilities. I'm not going to speculate on the probability. I will tell you the fundamentals of how that will be determined, and you can make your own assessment. Miners earn Bitcoin for verifying transactions. So it is a fee, effectively, that they earn, a service fee that they earn. If Scott and I want to exchange Bitcoin for whatever commercial reason, whether that's buying a pizza or doing a bank transaction or a banking type transaction, whatever transaction type we're doing, we're exchanging Bitcoin between the two of us. Okay. Now someone needs to verify that in the ledger. The people that do that with computing power are called miners. Now those miners don't take, if I want to send Scott one Bitcoin, the miners don't take a part of my Bitcoin that I send to Scott. They get a Bitcoin, think of gold, out of the ground. So out of the reserves that there are, of the 21 million, a small fragment of that is earned as a fee. Now, the reason why they are willing to buy computers and put insurance onto those computers and graphics processors and rent the premises on which they put these computer stacks and pay for the electricity and the security around it is because of those fees that they earn. So the more computing power they have, the higher the chance that they will be the one that do the transaction verification. And if they do get the transaction verified first, in other words, with the most muscle, they outmuscle all the other players in the market, then they earn the fee. But the only reason why they would stick around to earn the fee is because people like Scott and I are busy transacting in Bitcoin. So if Scott and I don't transact, the miners won't mine. So then you can see what we're describing here is a standoff. If there are two new currencies, or an old currency and a new currency, so there are two currencies after the fork, the miners will go where the transactions are, such as to earn the fee. The users will go where the miners are, such as to be able to transact. So who's going to move first? Welcome to the Great Migration, the Masai Mara and the wildebeest example. First mover, it's like an avalanche. You don't know why it starts, but someone throws a snowball, more ice follows that snow, and eventually you have an avalanche. Which way will it go? It's a good question. No one can answer that right now.
So Willem, just conscious of time here, there's a lot of questions that people have asked, which I'd like to keep questions to the end like we discussed. So people have asked, should we be do mining? You know, is mining still profitable? Is Bitcoin legal? You know, one of the ones I'd like you to answer now, because I think it's relevant, is that if someone was wanting to get started, whether they're in South Africa or England or elsewhere, what accounts do you, I don't know if you've got screens you want to share or if you just want to talk it through, but you know, between some of the ways to get going, you know, in terms of getting started in cryptocurrency.
Okay,
and so just, by the way,
do that.
Just before you answer that, I'll stop the poll so we can share the screen, but just before you answer that, if anyone wants to go in the chat room, you'll see I put 3 links. One is to the cryptocurrency WhatsApp group. The other one is to the exponential group, so you can learn about exponential technologies. And the third is to the digital real estate group. All 3 groups are specific to those genres. We don't spam people, so people voluntarily sign up. And then it's the community chatting, and you'll be amazed the information you get in all 3 groups, basically. So I'm going to close out. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds on the poll while Willem's getting ready. And then it just gives us an idea of the areas that you're interested in looking at, basically. So I'm going to close out the poll now, and we should be able to see your screen again, Willem. So if there's things you want to basically share. I'm just conscious of the time as well. Michiel, if you're ready to get going, let's look to change over to Michiel in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Scott, I will just make one more punt. At some stage, we'll also, in South Africa, we're launching the Exponential Technology Institute, which teaches kids about this stuff. Because, ladies and gents, you can see there's no school teaching this stuff. And I don't want to hog the airtime to punt the school, but I really do believe that the education system is leaving our kids behind. And in our institute, we will be teaching kids how to do this, how to open these accounts, how to trade, and the like. For everyone that's wanting to get started on this, that haven't started on this, if you're in South Africa, this is probably the easiest way, screen that I've got open here, Luno. They are in a variety of different countries, but probably they are the best one in South Africa because they've got a web interface, so on my desktop like you're seeing right now, as well as a mobile app. They offer a wallet in conjunction with the exchange. So the easiest way for you to do this is to open up the exchange in your jurisdiction where you have fiat currency, so money as we used to think about it. Rands and cents for South Africa, dollars and cents for the US, euros and euro cents for the EU. To open up an account is as simple as providing a login name, password, and email address, and then you will have a wallet associated with that exchange, which you fund by making an EFT or a wire transfer into that account. You then have spend capability once that deposit has been verified in order to use on the exchange to buy the cryptocurrency or the digital currency that you are interested in. And there are a variety of places that you can do this. If you're in the EU, like I know a lot of our viewers are, I'll switch to the next tab here. This is Bitstamp. They're a nice one. It's by far not the only one. The first one has got a variety of additional exchanges, and you'll notice that some exchanges offer only Bitcoin, like Luno at this stage do Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, although I know that they are in the process of testing Ether, which runs on the Ethereum blockchain. Just, by the way, get those right. A lot of people talk about, I will buy Ethereum. You can't buy Ethereum. Ethereum is the network on which Ether is sold. So Ether is the currency and Ethereum is the chain. There's Kraken, there's another one here, that's a multinational one. They've got exchanges listed in a variety of different countries with a variety of different types of digital currencies that you can buy, selection, if you like, or a bouquet, or a suite. CoinDesk is another big one. And then, ladies and gents, this is the ultimate tool of the world, this Google. Which exchange should I use to buy crypto? Question mark. See what that answer. I said cryptio, but you know what I mean. Google knows what I mean. And there it gives you lists, depending on where you are. So there are jurisdictions within which you still have exchange control associated with the fiat currency that you're going to exchange for cryptocurrency. And that is the entry point. Subsequent to that, you can move your digital currency onto any exchange in the world or to any cell phone in the world. Any cell phone in the world in a matter of seconds. And that is what, of course, and Scott, I'll hand over to Michiel with this last point. One of the fundamentals, let me just see how I get back to my video feed here. There we go. One of the fundamentals of cryptocurrency, all of them, is that they are not controlled by a central bank. And my sense is that the world will want this because for the first time, we have got an instrument that doesn't regard borders, that cannot be controlled by a single government or a particular political dispensation, and gives us full financial freedom to move this wealth of us to any corner of the world where there is a cell phone or a computer. Now you answer that for yourself. Where isn't there a cell phone or a computer? And that freedom is what I think underpins the intrinsic value of cryptocurrency. You might argue the same thing for gold. How do you take a bag full of gold to London? How do you get it across the border? There are exchange controls because it's a commodity and legal tender. So there's two sets of laws or two sets of regulatory frameworks that catch you. You cannot, and the banks have realized this, even in China where there was an attempted ban on cryptos, no government can control this. And that is the ultimate heartbeat, in my view, of cryptocurrencies. Let me pause there.
Yep, so guys, we're going to pause there. We're going to hand over to Michiel. We will come back to Q&A. There's some great questions like, you know, is it better to buy crypto in South Africa or England as an example? You know, Willem's made a lot of money in the arbitrage space. We will deal with that. We will deal with, is it legal? We will deal with the mining side. However, I'm going to hand over the screen to yourself, Michiel, because, you know, there's kind of new age assets, and then there's always the fundamentals of wealth. And 49% of the world's wealth is held in real estate. It stood the test of time. There's a reason that there's sayings out there like "He who owns the land is king," and everyone understands the value of a house, etc., etc. So I'm just going to quickly, where have you gone, Michiel? I just want to quickly share my screen back to you. Willem, we can still see your screen live if you are sharing your messages with your wife or girlfriend. But anyway, I'm handing over to Michiel, and yeah, I think you know, one of the things that we're trying to balance is that in life there's always, you know, new opportunity, but then there's also not only the creation of wealth, but then there's the preservation of wealth as well. And you know, there's some fundamental things that have stood the test of time. They've stood the bubbles and the crashes and everything else. And I really want to hand to Michiel, and then I'm going to bring it together at the end as to how you can marry together the new age technology with the fundamentals of real estate. Over to you, Michiel.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Willem. For those that was now completely blown your mind with all these funny terms, hang on there. It gets better after a while. So I'm going to go a little bit back to brick and mortar. So from that perspective, I would like to give you an update on our property side, and then also would like to show you how you can use our platform in a quite an innovative way so that you can really empower the people that you care about. But first, just a disclaimer, like always, please remember Wealth Migrate is not a financial advisor, and we also operate in multiple jurisdictions. Thank you. I've seen multiple international people online, which we know. Welcome to you. And yeah, each jurisdiction has its own rules, and please be aware of that. Right, so we started off, I think, with our new partner in Atlanta, which is the Richmond Honan Group. You heard we talk about them a lot, specifically because we've got our current opportunity, which we are having live on our website, is what we call Richmond Honan Medical 9 project. So we just updated it or showed that as a first part of our tour in Atlanta. So this is an existing building which offer guys quite a nice return on investment, and what's really unique about this project is that it is actually in a certain sense fairly safe, by the sense that the income from this project is escrowed for the 3 years, and we have the ability to actually just distribute from the escrow. So this is something, if you as an investor is risk sensitive, and that's something that you can discuss with your investor advisor to look at. So that's pretty exciting. For those that hasn't been on our website, please log on to wealthmigrate.com and you'll see this opportunity is live. We've launched it in mid-September and we're virtually full. It's about 900,000 left, so anybody that's still interested, please put it in the box here, in your chat box, and we'll get back to you. All right, so just to give you a bit of a view, it was so nice. Some of the investors that actually invested in this building was with us in Atlanta. We did the property tour of our existing properties and obviously the current opportunity. So you can see it's quite a world-class property. For those that know Atlanta, it's basically what they call Pill Hill. It's pretty much some of the largest concentration medical office blocks in Atlanta. It's just on the corner of the I-285 Ring Road and the Georgia 400 that's going north. And it's also very close to the Northside Hospital. Yeah, and the Richmond Honan Group has got a long history with this area. Lee's father, one of the founders, was actually also, Lee's father was actually one of the founders of the Northside Hospital as well, which is in this area. Yeah, so you can see it's pretty high-class equipment and quality. Really what we like about this is the absolute long-term leases. If you have missed it, I think it's not on this specific slide, but it's a fairly long-term leases, well over 10-year leases. That is part of these deals. So what's very nice about it is that the doctors that's already also got their practices in this part is also part investors to this. So you can basically say that the tenant has got a vested interest. Something interesting about the way that things are organized in Atlanta specifically, if you look on the top left-hand corner, there's a very large piece of equipment. And these equipments, the need for it is certified per area. So it basically means the state of Georgia ensures that this equipment is spread around so that it's not concentrated, and also ensures that the population have access to it in all parts of the city, and also positioning it for local centers. So that was the first stop. The next stop is where the Medical 10 building, which we're going to launch pretty much in next week once Medical 9 is done. So we're almost ready for it. This is a building that is forming part of what they call a Alpharetta campus. You'll see that there's a 10-acre campus with quite a master plan development, and Richmond Honan Group per se is specializing in campus development. And you'll see that they will start off with medical office blocks, which is the A's and the B's on this corner, and then they would also go into wellness center and also senior living. So it's an integrated campus, and that's very attractive because it becomes a destination. And as a result of that, it really ensures that we get quite high occupancies, and that is their strategy of how to further enhance the traditional lease upside. So what's very promising about this building is that that's also where Wealthe Migrate had the opportunity to actually launch our entry into the US market. Scott will talk more about that, but we as Wealthe Migrate are establishing our presence around the world, and we started off our American presence in this building. So from that perspective, it's a quite symbolic for us in the sense that that will also be our next project.
And Michiel, just to remind people, for those who haven't seen it before, one of the reasons we love medical is no matter what happens economically, people need doctors. So even if there's a worldwide crash, people need doctors. Secondly, doctors never move. You showed some of the medical equipment earlier. Like, that's massive. You can pick up your desk and your chair. I mean, Willem's currently operating out of his car, but a doctor can't, do that sort of surgery out of his car, And thirdly, doctors are very good at being doctors, but they're not very good, they're not accountants. So they tend to sign very good long-term favorable leases. And, when I heard that back in 2009 from Henny, like, it's such a common sense thing. And yet, when we went to America, house prices lost 70%, but our partners in medical never lost one tenant. In terms of, economic preservation, it's as good as you almost get, as long as you've got a good partner on the ground that can execute. And I just wanted to repeat it because sometimes it's taken for granted.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott. For us, that is...
These guys have got a 42-year history with a 96% occupancy, is it not?
Yeah, no, they've got that, and it's verified. And I think one of the key ingredients that they do is they create these destinations, as I outlined, where you can see very clearly that the seniors, the wellness, and the facilities will come in here. And also very interesting, in this specific campus, they will also install a proton center. It's one of the innovative ways that people can currently be treated for cancer. And so from that perspective, the fact that you have leading technologies, integrated approach, all make sure that this becomes fully let, and that's part of the idea that you can get these long-term leases. So we're going to launch that pretty soon. As you can see, it's pretty strong terms. The leases are pretty much 72% of them are more than 20% leases. So from that perspective, we're very, very excited to be part of this project. The Richmond Honan Group has previously acquired this building in the last, I would say, last month or so, and they're currently busy with the actual tenant installation process. So please be aware, guys, this is going to go fast. If Medical 9 is anything to go on, we raised more than 2 million in a week. So please get your pencils ready and log on, get your profile ready. I think it will go pretty fast. You also will hear now what additional options we're going to be doing on this project. So just be ready for that. Our current planning, hopefully with all the exchanges and the compliance that we need to go through, the process will most probably be complete by Friday next week. Right, for those that knows us well.
Sorry, Michiel, can I just quickly, I just want to point out, go back one slide, I just want to point out two things. People overlook at this. You've got 72% of the leases are 20-year lease terms. I'm sorry, I just want to point that out. Like, particularly in South Africa, people are used to 3 to 5, to put in perspective. So, and the second thing was, just the 17th of November, because a couple of people are asking when, so I'm just saying 17th of November. Yep, sorry about that.
No, thanks, Scott. I think one thing I also didn't mention, these returns are also escrowed up front. So from that perspective, it just makes it a very, very strong deal for those that is in a bear mode and think that the world is going to end tomorrow. This is one of the projects that you can definitely think of going into. All right, so for our existing investors, I'd just like to give you an update. For those that know us, we've built this portfolio of medical properties, and our investment committee was very clear in their directive. So as you know, we're building up 2 types of portfolios in the US, very much a medical portfolio and also a multifamily portfolio. Later on, we'll diversify a little bit more, perhaps in self-storage, perhaps in retail. But for the moment, we found that the #1 asset for commercial real estate, as per the DI Piper reports we've seen, was medical real estate. So we stuck to our knitting, and what's happening now is we believe that the market is at the point where we can achieve reasonably high sales prices. And to this end, we have embarked on a process to evaluate if it actually makes sense to sell the portfolio. So the scope of the portfolio sale is with our partner SG Properties, that has done an absolute stellar job for us. I can tell you, we haven't had a budget discussion where the deviation was more than 2 to 3% year on year. It has been an absolute pleasure to work with these guys. And we are continuing this relationship with all our properties that we're busy with them as well. So from this perspective, you'll see Medical 1, 2, 3, and 5 is in the scope. Medical 7 and 8. 7 is another property that we did with the SG Group in Dallas. And Medical 8, we're basically almost completing. That's not in scope. That's also with another partner. So from this perspective, we went to our investors, which is in these projects, in the month of September. We have asked them for a mandate to proceed with this process of evaluating should we or should we not. And be clear, there's no outcome predefined. It is a process. We received 2 written responses, and the key message was there, guys, I love your projects, we love the income, just don't let it stop. So that was pretty much the message. And yes, obviously, if we sell the portfolio, what happens with the proceeds? Can we do a tax effective roll into the next project? Can I get my money back? All of these questions has been asked. So while in the US, we sat down with Paul, Bruce, and the team to evaluate the portfolio. We did all the calculations in the background. So we pretty much know what we're in for. There is some pre-penalty payments that we have to do and all the nitty-gritties of that. So to the end of this period in Atlanta, the Richmond Honan Group has actually showed interest in buying the portfolio. They gave us a memorandum of understanding, and they said they would like a chance to evaluate this portfolio. And SG Properties and the Wealth Migrate Investment Committee said that from that perspective, there's no harm done. Let's proceed with the evaluation. And at the moment, we're in that process. SG Properties will obtain an independent broker value of opinion, and so that will just make us all 100% check that the offering is in line with what we believe the market can offer. So from that perspective, let's hold thumbs for the investors, and we'll keep you updated as the process goes. It's very clear, once we receive the pricing, we will communicate to those investors involved. And also I'll get some guidance from our investment committee and obviously from SG Properties, which is on the ground. So from our side, it's quite a nice exercise to do. It's really been a 3-year vision since we started to now look at what shall we do with the portfolio. And if the outcome is that it doesn't make sense to sell, then we simply proceed like normal and the income will not be affected. So we're very comfortable that all the assets is still a good asset, and there's no reason just to sell for the sake of selling. So that's where we are at that, and an update of that will come most likely at the end of November, beginning of December. That's roughly the timeline, but definitely before Christmas we'll give an update to these specific investors. All right, so let's look further a bit down the scenes. As you know, Wealth Migrate is very clear. We would like to offer investors opportunities to invest with a swipe of the finger, make it easy, just off the cuff, that you can invest in multiple parts of the world. For those that have done the direct international investments before, just imagine that you want to invest on 3 continents, 4th for that matter as well, and you have to set up your structures, go there and find it, and then eventually manage it. So we found that most investors don't do that. It's only a select few that does that. And that, I think, is a real value that Wealth Migrate is bringing to you, that you can actually invest in multiple continents. So we really would like to take that further now to the United Kingdom. I'm so pleased to see our newly appointed CEO of the United Kingdom, Ken Williams, is also online. Thanks, Ken, for coming online with us as part of the family on the 15th of September, where you and Scott actually also planted the Wealth Migrate flag in the United Kingdom. And to this,
Kevin.
Yeah, and Kevin. So to this end, we're in the final stages on confirming the structure and the due diligence with the Lyle Group. I think we're pretty much on track also to plan to launch it by the end of next week. So very exciting opportunity. Willie has done the top down. Ken and Arthur and Lauren in the UK has given us some feedback. and they told us very clear that one of the sectors that we need to be really, really looking at for is the office block conversions into real estate. This specific investment basically turns this block of flats, this block of office block into basically apartments for people to live in. There's an absolute dire need for this type of actual investment and conversion. Scott, you can maybe help me out with that specific programs that happens here specifically in London and the Kent area. You know, you mentioned how the zoning is fast track really just to accommodate this huge need of accommodation.
Yeah, look, in simple terms, without getting complicated, I'm just aware of time, is that you know, the office blocks are generally, with people changing and working from home and everything else, office blocks more and more are not in as much demand as they used to be. And yet accommodation, particularly residential accommodation, is in huge demand. It typically would take, best case, 2, probably closer to 4 years to get planning. And so they came out with a new legislation in the last 12 months, where if you had an office block, it could be converted into residential, and the planning takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So you can basically get in, buy an office block, get planning, and have it completed within a 12-month period, which is, you know, using capital and being able to transfer. And one of the things that we want to do is really copy what Henny and Peter did in Australia, where you invest in the buildings, you sell off 50% retail, recapitalize the building, take that capital and go and do it again over and over again. So, you know, it's a strategy that has worked very effectively in Australia for Henny and Peter. And I mean, that company today is worth $700 million using that strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I also would like just to make the investors aware, this is typically a project which we call our growth project. So there will not be any income during this refurbishment period, typically about 12 months. And the last 4 months was really just to get the tenants in, for that matter. So from that perspective, be aware that this is what we call a growth project. So simply put, you put your money in, and 18 months later, the return is going to be there as part of the planning. So as you can see, it's £770,000. We believe it's a test case, and what's very nice, this partner has ticked our boxes as from our criteria perspective, and they've got a pipeline of these lined up. So please get in as quick as possible. We believe this will go quite fast, and hopefully we can repeat this pattern. This is also a very clear portfolio strategy that we're going to follow in the UK. All right, then we're moving down under. I have to just put some disclaimers here. This product that we're going to show now is not for Australian investors or residents in Australia. We are busy with our finalization of our licenses, and our partner has granted the opportunity to participate in this project really for international investors, and very specifically the Kensington investors that we currently have. So yeah, our partners is the Osprop, Richard and Paul Niederer. They're from Australia. It's got a relationship with them. They've really seen that this is an opportunity where we could, as a first opportunity, offer the existing Kensington investors to roll their investment into this one. For those that's in Kensington, you know that we as Wealthe Migrate is very strict with the progress, and we have decided that that project is going ahead, but not to our liking and our satisfaction, and we are in the process of exiting that project, and that should hopefully be finalized in the next week or so. So from that perspective, we're going to offer this as an alternative to those investors. We've got 1 or 2 documentation things to do, but looks pretty good. And so from that perspective, it's really going to be available for international investors. So you can see that it's a 5 to 7 year project. From that perspective, it's fully leased, and yeah, company guaranteed lease. And we also seen that in Australia, this is definitely an option that that we are looking at. In this case, it's again actual income project. So just bear in mind that this one will pay their quarterly dividends. So that one, we're pretty excited to get Australia back on the map. And so from that perspective, I think we can clearly show you that we intend to do that. We currently have just completed, for those that know, in South Africa, the 0 to 1 project. Thank you for that, 202 investors. I think it was phenomenal reaction that we got, and so much so that we are going to get a South African project also on the line. It's most probably, we've got at least 3 to choose from. Willie and Jock, my colleagues on the due diligence team, is busy evaluating that, and we're rushing as fast as possible to evaluate that options and bring to you. So as you can see, the platform, you will have diversity from a continent and from a currency perspective. And then I would like to just bring additional features to your attention from the Wealth Migrate platform. So one of the things that we want to show you is what we call the Wealthe employment solution. And like always, Wealth Migrate actually does what it actually tells its investors to do. Not only we invest in our own projects, but we also have implemented the solution across all our projects. So the solution that I would like to mention to you is fairly simple. We basically offer employers to pay for investments on a real estate platform for the employees. So that basically means that, like for instance, Wealth Migrate, each and everybody in our company, from ladies at cleaning, from all the way to Scott and all the way to our board members, has got an opportunity to invest in each and every single project. So currently we're doing it at $100 per project. It's maybe not a huge size, but like we always think, it is where if you start investing as an employee, first of all, you are actually getting engaged and you're starting the habit to invest. And this is really what the solution is catering for, is where employer wants to encourage his or her employees to take ownership of their own financial future and start the investing journey. So how does it work? Well, the employer decides which employees that he would like this to participate in. He decides which quantum of investment per employee he would like to do. You can choose any amount or a standard amount. He will then request the actual employees if they choose to do so. Remember, that's still the free choice of the employee. But let's face it, if you get $1,000 or $10,000 as a bonus and you're going to say no, then it's basically your choice. So we don't prescribe, so the employer cannot prescribe, but the bottom line is they could recommend that this is an option for the employees to take up. That the employees then actually go to Wealth Migrate, open an account on a voluntary basis, like I said. The employer then complete the investment, and then we then give a consolidated report to the employee or employer, and they then pay for the individual's investments in a lump sum basis. So it's a very, very powerful solution. We've got 2 large companies that's starting to do that. As a matter of fact, just after the call, we're going to engage with the first company. And it's so empowering to hear that the employers are actually saying, I really, really would like to help my employees to really take ownership of their financial future. And, you know, last year I gave them a bonus and they just spent it, you know, and they're saying, if I ask them what happened with your bonus of last year, they really can't say. And it gave me a few other reasons, but the main reason is that employers, if you would like to really make a different connection with the employee, give them an alternative way to give them benefits, this is something that we really, really need to consider. And it's as simple as contacting us on Wealth Migrate. We've got a whole team ready to help your employees to get online. That's our business, and we can help them for sure. So from that perspective, we're pretty excited that this is a fairly standard way of doing it and getting it done. So let us know if you're interested specifically for these projects that we're going to launch now. We can be well in time for that to also be part of your bonus or your Christmas benefits to your employees, if that is your choice. If it's not, maybe your financial year only ends in March, then of course we can plan it like that as well. All right, so I think that's the first one that I wanted to talk about. And then the second solution is our gifting solution. For those that know that we actually have the possibility on our platform that minors can actually invest. This is such an awesome tool. One of our colleagues with his young daughter at 11 have jumped at this opportunity, and she is now actually a proud investor. She and her dad actually sit down and plan the investments, so it really is an option for you as a parent and you as a grandparent to maybe this year, instead of giving just money or like a simple voucher, or maybe toys that the kids doesn't use, or kids that has got a lot of items that they don't know about, why don't you consider in giving a gift, which is an investment gift? And pretty much what we do is you contact Wealthe Migrate. We're giving you a code that you can use for the amount that you would like to give. You can take that as per our Wealth Partners. If you haven't joined the Wealth Partners program, we actually have given each of our Wealth Partners 5 Christmas cards that they can then send to whoever they would like to send to, and with that also the actual voucher. For those that's online, we can do it virtually, so that's something that you can really consider. And I think it doesn't matter the amount actually. The whole idea is that you start and making a definite emotional connection with the loved ones and start teaching them how to invest and how to start saving for their long-term future. So these are some of the 2 products that we're bringing online from a Wealth Migrate perspective. There's at least a string of another 5, 6 projects that we're going to bring through, and just innovative ways that you can use the Wealth Migrate platform as it is at the moment, just to fulfill your goals, your investment goal, your lifestyle goals, so that you also ensure your own financial freedom. Right, Scott, I think that's pretty much it from my side. So back to you, and take us.
While I'm swapping over the slides, and just to be clear, my son walked in there. He's just got home from school. He's 5 years old, and Kelly and I are actually signing him up at the moment. So there's no minimum age anymore. Literally people can learn while doing. He'll tell us how I can buy 21 buildings while I'm swapping the slides over.
Yeah, Scott, that's another way that I think we can use the platform. We'll bring that step-by-step process out very soon, and the idea is very simple. One of the most powerful strategies that any investor has got is simply the fact that you compound your returns. And from that perspective, the Wealth Migrate platform is so ideally positioned to do that. And we're more and more seeing people actually doing it, and it's so exciting to see it. So what the idea is that, just to give you an example, if you take 50,000 on Medical Mind, for instance, you're going to get roughly $1,000 per quarter, which you can actually choose to reinvest. So that basically means every year you can take up another 4 projects, whatever is available, and invest that $1,000. So as you do that, you could understand that this $1,000 reinvestment plus the regional investments, $1,000 that comes every month, you then actually start to compound when you invest each time your dividends back into the actual current project, or if there's new projects. So if you take a typical 5-year project, you would understand that there will be 20 months, and your initial investment would be your actual 21st investment. So if you repeat that process over a 5-year period, you will actually be invested in 21 actual deals or projects for that matter, and you would actually then have a compounded return on those as you invested. And if you do that in a super cycle, as I call it, let's say you got your returns after the 5 years, your capital gains coming back also into your wallet, and you repeat that cycle, you can actually do this pretty much for 10 years. And believe me, we've done the sums, and we're going to show that to investors. So come back and we'll show you how you can pretty much help your child, your millennium, to really, really be in a very strong financial position, let's say by age 35, let's say by age 40. And just think where you can be if you've started your investment career at 11, like my colleague's daughter has started. And she just got time on her side. And as you know, it's more time in the market than anything else. So, yeah, Scott, that's pretty much. I hope I've enticed them long enough to come and see us pretty soon on the other recipes in our recipe book for success, for lifestyle, for freedom, and yeah, let's see when that comes online, that everybody can enjoy that goals of achieving their freedom and whatever that means.
Cool. So guys, I'm conscious of the time, and you know, really, I think just to echo what you're saying, this book, Real Estate Riches, is a book I read at 19, and it's an amazing book, but it's the theory, and you've still got to go out and actually do the practice. You know, many people have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know, and many of you have played this little game called Global Monopoly, and what Michiel's really explaining is that the world has changed completely, and you can now learn while doing. You don't learn the theory and hope to implement, you know, and I think, you know, same with my son. At the age of 5, if he can start to learn while doing, it's going to be a very different lifestyle. So guys, in terms of the 17 lessons of this year, I want to really bring it together and encapsulate and bring it together. I do know that a lot of people have been asking questions. In the question box, we have been answering them and hopefully replying to all. I know Willem has also been replying to a lot of the cryptocurrency ones, and I am conscious of time. So I'm going to rock and roll, and I'm going to move fast. And if needs be for me to go back and redo the recording for the 17 lessons, I will do that in the essence of speed and time. The first lesson for me is blockchain. You know, for 2 years now, we've spoken about blockchain. If you don't know about blockchain, it's going to have a bigger impact on your life than the internet did itself in 1995. And I really want to share you a little video that I believe is the best definition of what blockchain is and why it's going to impact you and every single person in business over the next 20 years.
This is the seller. This is the buyer. This is the middleman. Cutting out the middleman can be a great thing, unless you're the middleman. And there are a lot of middlemen or intermediaries out there. Entire industries, such as payments or securities clearing, have evolved to rely on them. Why? Because they establish trust where there is none. They establish ownership, that the seller has the right to sell what's being sold. They attest to history, that there is a clean transaction history. And they certify ability, that the buyer has the money to buy it. All pretty critical details when you don't know the person on the other side of the transaction. Intermediaries know and trust one another. Their business is based on it, so they have more to lose than gain from breaching that trust. But what if there were a better, cheaper middleman, one that didn't add as much cost, complexity, and transfer error? There might be. It's called blockchain, and it has the potential to disrupt the entire ecology of intermediaries. It's a distributed ledger that relies on large networks of computers that redundantly encode transaction data by solving complex mathematical equations. The secure ledger provides an inviolable record. If the history of an instrument is incorruptible and available to all parties, there's no need for a third party to vouch. Blockchain is proof of ownership, history, and ability in non-centralized encrypted form. It's fast, transparent, and free of error. The question is not whether blockchains can cut out the middlemen in complex transactions, but rather which middlemen and when.
So for me, that's the first lesson. I highly recommend that you look up blockchain, and we built our platform on blockchain. We were the first global real estate marketplace to build it on blockchain, and we did it for 2 reasons. One was the greatest challenge you've got in the game we play is trust, and ultimately it can provide people with a foundation of trust. And secondly, it dramatically reduces the friction costs to allow us to be able to, you know, Michiel spoke about the vision and the dream, to make investing as simple as a swipe of a finger from literally $1, and it enables that. The second lesson for us is crypto. Yeah, mate?
Scott, maybe just a quick one for those that is pocketing with Bitcoin at the moment. Get out, pay with Bitcoin into Medical 9. You know that you can actually buy online with Bitcoin into something that's not going to disappear. It's not going to have knives and forks. It's going to have bricks and mortar. So if you're scared to lose out, please remember our platform actually allows that to be done.
So I actually have it here. So I'm pretty much logged in onto the platform. You can see Bitcoin accepted here. So that's what Michiel is talking about. So people can invest from anywhere in the world using Bitcoin. They can fund through BitPay, fund their wallet, and invest in real estate in England, Australia, America, or South Africa, like Michiel said. Guys, I think, and again, I'm rocking and rolling here, but Willem's spoken about the mass adoption. If you look 12 months ago, the value of Bitcoin was $181 and the total market cap was 2.1 billion. When I did this on Monday a week ago, it was 12 months ago, it was $708 and the market cap was $11 billion. And then when I did this a week ago, the price was, believe it or not, $6,135. Today it's closer to $7,200 and the market cap was about 102 billion. So the total volume has increased by 12.8 times over the last 10 months. And why this is really important is that Peter Diamandis and talks a lot about the 6 Ds of disruption. And so money has been digitized or is in the process of being digitized. And we're now very much in the deceptive phase where we're getting doubling upon doubling upon doubling. And most people don't really notice what's happening. Willem's already said to you, 10 million people to 100 million people in the last 12 months. That is very, very significant. And that's when it starts to become disruptive. It changes the world as we know it. And then it goes into dematerialization, demonetization, and democratization. And ultimately what we get excited about is the democratization of wealth and ultimately people all being able to participate in it. Ray Kurzweil talks a lot about the user interface moment. And at the moment to buy cryptocurrencies is still quite tricky. Try buy Ether. You've got to know what you're doing technology-wise. And these are the moments that you need to look for mass adoption in terms of what's happening. If you take a third lesson, it's around ICOs. This is a report that if you write in their ICO report, we can send it to you. David Orban, who's one of the leaders globally in this space, sent this to us. And what's interesting in the ICO space, which stands for Initial Coin Offering, if you invested in every single ICO this year and you'd invested 10,000 euros in the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they reckon as many as 90% could fail, you would still have 13.2 times your money, which is quite important. And then really for us, what we look at when we look at the ICO space is we say, well, why are those 90% going to fail, and how does one focus on the top 10%? And really we believe there's 3 things that you need to look for. The first one is that you need to look for a business that actually exists and that knows how to make money. Anyone can write a white paper on how they're going to change the world and make money. Very few businesses actually have an existing business and actually know how to make money. The second thing is you need to look for a team that knows how to execute. Again, anyone can have an idea. Is the market going to go up? Is the market going to go down? Are there going to be market corrections in the ICO space, in Bitcoin, and in the world economy at large? Yes, it's guaranteed. So you need to have an executive team and a leadership team that knows how to execute in both the ups and the downs. And the third thing is that you need to look for supply and demand. Coins are going to be based on the value, and Willem's already spoken about it, which is basically simple economics of supply and demand. And our belief is that you then need to choose a cryptocurrency that is based on something that there'll be mass adoption. People truly understand from a significant perspective. So we really are launching the Wealthe coin. It's a cryptocurrency, but it's based on real estate. Now, whether you're a rice farmer in China, a rickshaw driver in India, a goat herder in Africa, or an investment banker in New York, every single person on this planet understands the value of real estate. And yet most people don't have access to it, but they still understand the value. So, if you take what Jaco did about 2 years ago now, there were 6 stages. We were going to build out the transaction process, then the supplier process, then the investor process, then the real estate. We're going to finish the infrastructure, and ultimately we're going to launch a cryptocurrency. So we didn't get excited in the last 6 months and decide to write a white paper and try and do an ICO. This has been something we've been planning for years. More recently, Jaco's updated this, and really Wealth Migrate is here. It exists on the Wealthe exchange. We've got all our tooling systems that ultimately help people make smart investments. But there's no reason on the supply side we can't deal with Proppy or Real, if you understand what's happening in the ICO space, with all the different crowdfunding sites like Realty Mogul or Fundrise or Property Partners, with all the different private equity sites, both the public and the private REITs and all the banks. And then you've got the Wealthe exchange, which is ultimately think of it like a deeds, a digital deeds office in the cloud, in the exchange, built on blockchain basically. And really the Wealthe coin is the catalyst that unlocks the entire ecosystem. The second thing that's really important here is that there's been a lot of adoption in online education. And although there's been a lot of growth in online investing, there's been very little adoption. And the way that you solve that is through trust. And so for us, the most important components are what we call gamification. The whole way that people are learning is changing. And I'm not going to bore you with this slide, but this is the complexity that we're going with in gamifying the entire process. So whether that's people learning how to invest in the education side, whether that's investing, whether that's helping in the due diligence space, whether that's being part of the community and engaging and sharing globally, or whether that's having a purposeful impact on the planet. All 5 of those genres are going to be gamified, very similar to the vitality points, which will allow people to participate in the coin and what is actually happening. And that is why it's a cryptocurrency based on real estate in terms of where we're going. And we're working with, you know, one of the leading experts in gamification, a guy called Darren, and he actually shared to our wealth partners in Johannesburg, where you can watch that recording. So that's really the basis upon Wealthe Coin. It's really, really exciting. The second phase for us will be that, you know, 20% of it will be a utility coin that ultimately unlocks the entire value of the ecosystem. And when the regulatory environment is ready from a securities perspective, we would look to actually be able to invest in real estate and ultimately allow people, 1 billion people on the planet, to be able to invest in real estate. If you want to know the dates, you know, we literally are about to go into the pre-sale in terms of the process. Or sorry, we're in the pre-sale. We're about to go into the pre-sale, and you can see there that there's significant bonuses, and then ultimately go into the token sale. And again, if you're interested, you can just write here Wealthe Coin, and we can come back to you. What we have done for our wealth partners, who are actually our shareholders in the company, we've got over 120 of them around the world now. We actually said to them, why make it risky? Why make it difficult? And so people that actually participated and invested as a shareholder actually got token as well. And depending on the timing, they got it between 100%, 70%, or 50% in tokens. So if they put $1 in, they got, you know, $1 of shares, and they got 70% of tokens. So if you are interested in that and becoming a wealth partner, it really allows you to participate in the company and in the token at the same time. Although there's only about $1 million left, and then that'll close out, and then there'll be no opportunity to get involved in equity going forward. Another major lesson for us is communication. You know, we deal with people and human beings, and it's always very difficult to balance between the compliance component and being able to have real communication. And like Michiel mentioned on Kensington, not every project goes according to plan. It's a big lesson for us, and we're going to consistently engage with the community around how we can communicate and give direct and transparent feedback as to what is happening. Another one is community management, and you've already spoken to Kim today. And you know, I think this is really an important one. You know, we've got the different WhatsApp groups, and it's really hard. You know, you can literally, you can't put whatever you like on Facebook. There are rules and guidelines, and it's important, because if you don't have that, then people just hear noise and they don't want to be engaged, basically. And you know, we learned some hard lessons on our WhatsApp groups around the whole farmers, and you know, I was trying to provide guidelines, and obviously the farmers are very emotive, and so we're constantly trying to learn as to how we can provide guidelines within the community, but also have engagement. And we look forward to a future with Kim and the team driving it, where we're interviewing all the wealth partners, we're understanding their profiles, both their successes and their losses and their learnings. You know, we want to really have an active community where it's many to many versus one to many. We'd like to organize meetups all over the world, and ultimately Kim is going to be driving that. The sixth lesson for me is the power of the crowd. And you know, a couple of, probably a year ago, I heard about Bell Pottinger and how the Guptas were paying to create racial hatred in South Africa to take away from the attention of how themselves and Zuma were corrupting the government. And it was very exciting when I was there in September to pick up the Financial Times, and Bell Pottinger had gone bankrupt, which is absolutely brilliant. It's the biggest PR company in England. And on top of that, I think KPMG has really learned about the power of the crowd. And I tend to say to all of us, we really need to understand the power of the crowd and use it more to our advantage. You know, the seventh lesson for me is single focus and accountability. You know, as we grew as a small company, many people were trying to do many different things. And in the last 12 months, we got very specific, very focused with single point accountability. And I think the results speak for themselves. You know, if you look at the members on the platform, they've literally grown dramatically. I mean, over the last 12 months, it's grown by 2.1% per day, or 63.9% per month. The number of cities where members come from has grown from 84 to 217. The number of countries where members have come from has grown from 76 to 105. The number of countries where investors have come from has grown from 20 to 42. And the growth in investors has also increased by 0.5% per day or 15% per month. And I think this is, really phenomenal for the team. We've had more than $65 million go through the platform now, facilitating over $379 million worth of real estate transactions. And I think you can see these numbers now visually for yourself, because this is an example of a real business that has real transactions from 42 countries around the world, and all built on the blockchain. And one of the things we're proudest of is the 70% reinvestment, from our clients. And we are post-revenue now. Last year, we made $1.1 million, and this year we're on track to get close to doubling that. The eighth lesson is data-driven. I think Michiel deserves a huge amount of credit here. But the more you are data-driven, the more you will understand, what is going on in your business. We've got some very strong individuals in this company, and there were a lot of opinions, and ultimately the data allowed us to make the right decisions. And, we tend to say to people, there's three key metrics that we're interested in. It's 1 million transactions per year at an average of $2,000 per transaction, with an average fee of 5%, which will be a combination of the demand side and the supply side. And ultimately equates to $100 million in revenue, which is $1 billion company. And all the metrics and the data is what we're tracking to make the right decisions for the customers to allow that to happen. The ninth lesson for me is delegation. I personally had the privilege of meeting Richard Branson a number of times. And when I asked him about how to build a great company, he said, hire great people, set them up for success, and get out of their way. And for us as an organization, and now globally with a footprint in 5 continents with some incredible people, we have to really start to understand what autonomy is, and each and every one of us learning about the delegation and being able to set people up for success. And I think the two businesses that we really idolize and try and learn a lot of lessons from and copy are Amazon and Virgin in this space. Then in terms of the marketplace rollout, this, and Willem, you spoke earlier about Uber versus, I've just gone and forgotten the other name of the other company. Anyway, the one with the moustache. And I think that's my point, is that this book is an amazing book, which I highly, highly recommend, called Upstarts. And it talks about how Uber and Airbnb just spread out all over the world and how they did it quickly. And that's why everyone knows about Uber and no one knows about Lyft in terms of the process. And so we've been literally rolling out countries. We launched 3 in the last 6 weeks. We've got a number to go before the end of Christmas. And we really are globally following the strategies they used to build the global real estate marketplace. And we like to say the trusted global real estate marketplace. I think funding has really changed. The world of funding has changed. Most people in the old days, you went to institutions, you went to venture capitalists, then came crowdfunding, and now you've got this ICO space. And it's amazing what has happened. More money has been raised in ICOs in America than through traditional venture capital. What's amazing is that the regulatory environments have really actually come to the party here and are catching up fast. And then lastly, you've got access to a global audience. You've got access to people. I mean, there's literally people on this webinar, hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world. And you can now go out to your community. You can build your community versus having to deal with one company, one entity, or one individual. The next one for us that I believe is really important as a lesson is emerging markets. I could talk about this for half an hour. I do believe those people that have grown up in the emerging markets, that understand emerging markets, it's going to be one of your greatest assets in the next 50 years. Because really, this is where the rising middle class is coming in. You can see there's 1.2 billion people joining the middle class just in these different regions. And this is specifically who we are focusing on, because they want access to education, they want access to health, and then they want access to wealth. The next one is diversification. And, if you think about it from BRICS, Trump, North Korea, Zuma, or hurricanes, everyone wants diversification. And when you look at these global capital flows, these are still the wealthiest, the top 1% of the top 1% investing around the world. But truly what we're excited about now through our platform is from as little as 1,000 Rand, and or $1,000, you can now invest on 4 different continents, and you don't have to worry about the tax, the structuring, the compliance, the bank accounts, and you can just have a hassle-free way to be able to diversify. The next lesson is AR and VR. Please watch the space. Augmented reality specifically is going to have a very big impact, and they talk about the user interface moment. It's coming in the next 3 years, and they reckon that no longer will you have access to cell phones or even screens like we're all watching now. In terms of artificial intelligence, You know, the new lawyers come out called Ross. It's actually been hired on its first case. So if any of you are lawyers, and more importantly, if your children are studying to be lawyers, I highly recommend they go and check this out, because it's only a matter of time till lawyers are redundant, and soon after that will come accountants. And you know, it's something that we are really taking aggressively, because we want to bring AI and robotic advisors, robo-advisors into our user experience, so that they can ultimately make smart investments for themselves. The 16th lesson for me is team. You know, Dr. Dolph Duris says, if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. And I think this is a picture of us at one of our events, a Wealth Weekend event. And you know, our wealth partners are the greatest asset we've got in this organization. Now, every single person that works in the team is a shareholder. And so that's not only the internal team, but that's our external wealth partner community. And it's growing, it's all over the world, and it's extremely exciting in terms of that process. And I'm deeply grateful to each and every team member, both a team member and the external wealth partner community that is on this call, because it's really you that's allowed us to grow this organization. And, you know, I suppose we owe a huge amount of gratitude to this guy, Mark Benioff and Behind the Cloud, because they did this back in 1999, and we literally copied it. And we look forward to getting the same results that they are. And really, my last lesson for today is how to spot the future. And this is Ray Kurzweil. He has, for the last 30 years, had a higher than 80% prediction on technologies, not only what's going to happen, but when they're going to happen, literally to the year. You know, Bill Gates calls him the grandfather of artificial intelligence. He's currently running the artificial intelligence for Google. Go look at his book called The Singularity is Near. And I highly recommend that you go and look up Ray Kurzweil. But in simple terms, when I had the privilege of learning from him directly, he said the easiest way to spot the future is look for massive trends, look for them intersecting, and then that's what you aim for. And, you know, this is a great little cartoon I found. Most people think their life is predictable. Most think that their life is going to end up here. But when you look at what the impact of mobile phones or Uber or Airbnb, and, you know, in some cases, even internet banking, most people never expected that their lives would be here. And this is the exponential growth factor. These are the massive trends that you need to look that are colliding together. And so for us, there's some massive forces of change. You know, there's economic forces. People want to have a meaningful and direct impact on their investments. They want to take care of their financial destiny. They don't trust their governments or their bosses anymore. And they want to right the wrongs of the past. On the social connection perspective, people want to invest together. The millennials want purpose above profit. They want to have travel and the ability to have freedom. They want trust and transparency. They want social commerce. And ultimately, they want collaborative, smart investing. And then on the technology component, you know, we've spoken a lot today about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, gamification, mobile adoption, and internet connectivity. And really for me, these three major forces are colliding. But there's 8 forces that we are really focusing on. The first is gamification and learning. We believe that it's going to fundamentally change the education system. The second is blockchain and cryptocurrencies. It's going to increase trust and reduce friction costs massively. The third is social commerce and collaborative investing. It's going to increase returns and reduce risks for all investors. The fourth is personalization. We are all tired of big business telling us what we will or won't do as a group. We want to personally look after our lives. We want to create the freedom for our lives, for our family, and we want to have meaningful connections. There's a massive rise in the middle class, which I've spoken about, and the 3 billion unbanked people that are joining the global economy through mobile adoption and internet connectivity. There's globalization and local volatility. And because of this, people want to be diversified across countries, assets, and currencies. There's social pressure. You know, people have had enough of the 1% and the 99% not having access. They want social change, and you're seeing it with Brexit and Trump getting elected and what's happening in Europe, and quite frankly, the Arab Spring and many, many other instances all over the world. And then finally, investors are wanting to have a purposeful impact. They're not only just focusing on the profit and the return, they want to co-create a better planet that they want to see, and like we tend to say, a better and more sustainable planet for all. And ultimately, we see these 8 forces all colliding. And many years ago, and I know you're going to laugh at me with the graphics, but I wanted to use the original graphics because many years ago, more than 3 years ago, we actually gave these graphics to all the team members and the wealth partners. And we said, guys, our 2020 vision is to impact 1 billion people. Now, many people think we're stark staring mad, but hopefully you can see now as you bring these 8 forces together, how this is truly possible, and most importantly, how the Wealthe coin becomes the catalyst to unlock this and allow every single person to participate in that wealth that is held in real estate. And so I want to just finish off and really share with you a poem, because most of you that are on here today, Willem spoke about the early adopters, and there's very, very few people out there that are still aware of what is going on, and all of you, I want to recognize it. And it's a poem I love. It's a poem that one of my best friends, Richard Marshall, gave me the day I started my first business in 2004. And he said, the credit belongs to the person who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best in the end knows high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the great twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. And I want to celebrate each and every one of you. We've learned today about digital currencies, we've learned about real estate, and we're also learning about the digitization of real estate, and ultimately how we can build a cryptocurrency based on real estate. And so it's really quite exciting in terms of what's happening. I want to move into a Q&A, but before I do that, I want to leave you with one thought. Peter Diamante says the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest opportunities. I think most people around the world would agree that the wealth gap is the greatest challenge on the planet. And what Willem has shared, what Michiel has shared, and hopefully what I've brought together, and particularly with the Wealthe coin, you can see that our purpose to solve the wealth gap, to empower at least 1 billion people by 2020, is truly now becoming a reality with the technology that is ultimately disposable. And so in terms of the next steps, and then we're going to get into the Q&A, is that if you're interested in investing in the real estate, speak to an asset manager, and we'll post it up there. But you've got the details there for Kevin. Go online to wealthmigrate.com, or if you're interested in the Wealthe coin, go to wealthe.io. Join as a wealth partner, become part of the ecosystem. Speak to Kevin, start the journey into crypto and global investing, and most importantly, join us on this purposeful journey. And so, without further ado, I want to hand over and say, thank you to everyone. It's always an honor and a privilege. If you do need to duck, so be it. I know that Willem probably needs to duck, and I don't know about Michiel, but I do just want to try and get into these questions quickly if there are any questions that we haven't been able to answer. And what I'd suggest maybe, Kevin, if you can help us, and Kevin's been very quiet behind the scenes, but again, like many of the team members, one of the most important people ensuring that this ecosystem is taking place. If people, would you mind just running, Kevin, if there's questions that we haven't answered? And while we're doing that, I'm going to run through a couple more polls that we haven't run yet, and people can give us some guidelines now that they've heard everything on just what they might or might not be interested in. But over to you, Kevin, in terms of the questions and what, if you think there's some that we haven't answered that people really want to know the answer.
Thanks so much, Scott. Yeah, we have been answering the questions in terms of actually writing the answers and sending them out to all of the people. So you should be able to see those answers coming through in the chat box. The one question that hasn't been answered is just in terms of you, Willem, around your where people can find out about their kids and what they can learn. So I don't know if you wanna sort of just answer that. And then Scott, also if you could potentially just run through your 17 lessons. People have said, oh, I've missed number 4, I missed number 5, or potentially we can send that to people afterwards.
Yeah, so I think so. Just before Willem jumps in there, please answer the polls, guys. It gives us much more accurate feedback. And then, at the end of the day, your time is valuable, so is ours, so we can be specific as to what you want. I will put my presentation up on Slido. Michiel, we can do the same thing so that people can get access to it. We will also do the 17 lessons as a write-up, and the recording will be available. But yes, we can happily share the 17 lessons. Willem, tell us about the children. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about, and fundamentally believe if we don't empower our youth, we have no future.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Scott and Kev. So the school is called Exponential Technology Institute. Effectively, it's an intervention that takes place over 5 weeks. On the weekend of the first week, we will teach kids aged between 14 and 22. Probably we'll split them in 2 classes just because of high school and university. On the first day, we'll teach the kids about exponential thinking versus linear thinking, so the world of abundance versus the world of scarcity, platform businesses, how new business models work. We'll have entrepreneurs in the room that are running successful businesses inside of each of those exponential technologies, which will include robotics, IoT, obviously cryptocurrencies, blockchain must be in there, drones, 3D printing, AI, machine learning, and the like. Those entrepreneurs would not only give content, but would also bring actual technology along that kids can experience. So the virtual reality guy will bring VR rigs and the kids will wear them. Lorian is going to, or has created for us, a virtual playground in which kids can buy digital currency, fake, so you won't lose any real money, or make, by the way, and then they can learn to transact and trade with it. We then use the last part of the day to showcase the problems that society faces, so exactly the stuff that Scott shared now. Both him and I, as you know, are Singularity University alumni, and we follow Peter and the philosophy around the biggest problems in the world, also representing the biggest commercial opportunities. So solve for corruption, very relevant in South Africa. Solve for poverty, very relevant in South Africa and in the world. Literacy, financial inclusion, access to sanitation and clean drinking water, etc. And then we implore the kids to use the technology tools that we've immersed them in, not just content-wise, but also experience in the morning, to build businesses that solve these grand problems. They get 5 weeks of digital collaboration with one another across ages, across geographies, so we're teaching them how to collaborate. And then if they want to, they can come back 4 weeks later, so in the 5th week, and then we'll have the VC there together with some corporate partners, and if the business is a good idea, we'll fund it, and we'll help them establish that business. If you don't, like in a Shark Tank type format, and even if you don't win, all those entrepreneurs that are there have agreed to enabling internships for kids that they spot in the, those are that enthusiastic, fit the profile, that really want to help. And so even if your kid doesn't win the actual opportunity to have investment from us, certainly has the chance to get an internship, and at the very least comes away with a new imprint, which schools aren't affording these kids, around things like robotics and the kind of content that we were covering today. That's one of 16 technologies that we'll be teaching. First classes run in Johannesburg from the 2nd week of January. Our website goes live hopefully before the end of this month. And what I will do is I will let the community know once the site is live, which will also allow for reserving your spot. Thanks for that plug and the opportunity to share that, Scott. Much appreciated.
No. It's critically important, and I would also ask. I can't remember quickly. I just wanted to quickly share something which is equally important, and that's the pay it forward that the ladies started at the Women in Wealth. Pay it forward .wealth migrate, because this is a classic example of a child and the impact it can have. I hope I got my link right. Yeah, I did. So this is a gentleman. Can you see my? Can you just tell me? Can you see the pay it forward screen, or have I still got the?
You're still on the poll.
I need to close the poll. Okay, let me just close the poll. So so if you look here, the pay it forward. So you can just go to this link, payitforward.wealthmigrate.com. And this is a young gentleman that we met back in 2015. It's exactly what you're talking about, Willem. I absolutely love watching kids with the tenacity and the determination come forward. This young man, his mom is a policeman. His dad is a security guard. One of the most tenacious guys I've ever met. And he basically told us a dream. He came up to Joburg, never been out of out of the community, and flew up to Joburg with us and shared his story at one of our Wealth weekends. And we actually agreed to put him through a private school, and it's just been amazing what this guy's been able to achieve, not only within the private schooling environment, but equally playing hockey for Southwestern districts, etc., etc. So, people want to participate, and and be very purposeful. You know, our community is very much driving this and continuing to do it. And I think what Willem's doing, and you know, equally what we've been doing at the Lemonade Day thing, is really driving how can we provide more value within the ecosystem and help our children, you know, do better. Kevin, what other questions do we have? There were lots earlier, and I know for those watching in the recording, they won't be able to see the questions. So what we will do is we will take the questions and turn it into an FAQ that we can put as a blog, either on our blog or we'll put it somewhere. I don't know. There'll be a link at the bottom of the YouTube link as to where you can go on the questions, because there were a huge amount of questions. But is there anything else that that is really standing out? We've got a maximum of 15 minutes. We've got a hard stop in 15 minutes. But if there's anything that I'm happy to stay online 15 minutes and answer any questions that I can possibly help with.
Yeah, Scott, a very interesting question that we got from Amanda is, you know, if you invest in Wealth Migrate investments with the Bitcoins, you actually convert from Bitcoin into US dollar, and your investment is actually then linked to the US dollar, and the value of the property in the specific case would be US dollar, or if in the UK pounds, in Australia in Australian dollars, in South Africa in Australian dollars. So if we then return the investment, it will be in that base currency. So the conversion actually just happens once from Bitcoin towards the US dollar. So I just want to clear that point up. It sounds simple, but it's just a bit confusing if you then want to invest with Bitcoins. I just want to make clear it's just a once-off conversion from Bitcoin to the investment currency. So it's just a once-off time.
Yeah, and I think to be very clear, Michiel, is that at the moment that's the way it is. And one of the reasons that we are embarking on the Wealthe coin is that we see a future where someone in China or South Africa or India or South America with a swipe of their finger can move Wealthe coin from that country, you know, to America, invest in property, you know, America or anywhere else for that matter, England, Australia, anywhere, and invest with a Wealthe coin and actually hold the asset in, you know, in Wealthe coin and get paid back in Wealthe coin. I mean, that's where we're going. We're not there yet. But that's, you know, but for now, what Michiel's talking about is we can use Bitcoin through BitPay to fund our wallets, which is, you know, at least a step in the right direction in terms of where technology is going, in terms of that. There's a question that I got asked as well, what's the minimum investment? And if you invest in South Africa, it's 1,000 Rand. If you invest internationally around the world, be England, Australia, America, it's £1,000 in England, it's $1,000 in America, it's 1,000 Australian dollars in Australia. We're really trying to get that minimum down. It was 100,000, then it was 10,000. Now we've got 1,000. We beat it testing 100. Our dream, as fast as possible, is to get it to 100. And long term, our dream is to get it to $1 per person per investment, so that we can truly empower everyone and anyone globally to be able to participate in terms of what is happening. The other thing that people ask me is that if they invest in direct property, you know, is this a fund? Is this a REIT? You know, no, it's not. The direct property investment, the specific property you choose to invest in, call it Medical 9, is ring-fenced. We never touch your money, so there's no chance of risk in terms of us going bankrupt. We never touch your money. We just facilitate the transaction. In a similar way to how the Uber driver drives you from A to B, you know, they don't actually get involved in the transaction, and so we facilitate the whole thing. And secondly, you know, if you put in 10%, then you would own 10% of the asset, and you would not only get 10% of the income, you would get 10% of the capital growth over time. And again, there's different types of projects, so the time frame varies, but hopefully that gives people a pretty simple analogy of how it actually works, basically.
Now, Scott, just a very obvious question is, how do I get involved? Scott, maybe just show again our websites where they can get the relevant information. First of all, obviously, wealthmigrate.com for the investments, and then I think the contact details and the relevant websites is shown there. I've tried to answer most of those questions, but it's pretty obvious. I think also I see a lot of people asking for the coin reports and how that's happening. I think Scott and Kevin has outlined that quite nicely on the wealthe.io website. So please take note of that. That's additional website.
Just sign up on the wealthe.io website, and then you'll be kept fully up to date. you know, in terms of white papers. I mean, the white paper is imminent. And then you've got, I mean, just by the way, you've got Kevin's details here, and he'd be able to put you in contact. The other person that was critical is well, Kim's already given you her details, and Jason. So Jason at wealthmigrate.com, particularly if you're interested in Medical 9, Medical 10, and the Aussie deal, the English deal, and then he can make sure it goes to the right people. The other thing that I think is important is that, again, in the chat box, and I will put them below in the YouTube video for those watching the recording, we've got the links to our WhatsApp groups. And again, I repeat, we've got a crypto group, which is very active daily on what you should or shouldn't be doing. And again, it's not financial advice, it's your peers collaborating. It's exponential technologies, where we've really driven all the technologies that Willem was talking about. And I tell you, I've learned so much from people sharing all around the world. And then thirdly, it's digital real estate and everything you need to know about the different markets, the different opportunities. And all three groups, you know, you get to choose whether you want to be on them and if you want to leave. But I tell you what, I learned so much through that environment. It's absolutely amazing. Right, how much time have we got here? Let's see. We've got enough time. We've got 10 minutes. Let's look. I'm going to go into the dashboard here quickly and go look for some questions and see what I can find.
Scott, just while you're looking for questions, I have 2% battery on my laptop, so it's timed itself perfectly as an Apple would. So if I log off, it's not because I want to leave, it's because I'm disconnected for battery. Then I'm out of options.
No, fair enough, Willem. Well, thank you very much for being online. I mean, just quickly, mining Bitcoin, Willem, a lot of people ask this question. What are your thoughts before your laptop dies on you?
Okay, so my biggest warning would be careful of scams. There are instances where I've looked at mining where the serial number of the CPU or the GPU that was assigned to me by the pool group had actually already been in use in other hash rates and in hash power rather. And as a consequence, it's someone who's selling the same system physically to more than one person. So be careful of those. I personally am not in the mining space because I got fearful when I started seeing this sort of behavior. Someone asked on the question list if you can do it individually or should you do it in pool. I think it's highly unlikely that an individual CPU, GPU would be powerful enough to compete with the enterprise level stacks where people are building server farms with industrial type cooling and real estate where they put warehouses full of linked machines into the hash rates. But again, I stand to be corrected. That was just my sort of desktop review of the type of industry. The other thing also is that your profit in mining is crypto revenue minus fiat currency equals fiat profit. So if the price of the underlying cryptocurrency fluctuates, you'll find your profit margin fluctuating. That might be a nice business to be involved in. Could be. From an investor perspective, there's some risk there that I don't know if you can cover fixed fiat overheads with fluctuating revenue. What's going to happen after the fork if your mining is on the wrong hash channel? So for me, I think there's someone better to answer that question.
1% to go. How legal is Bitcoin?
Oh, it depends on where you are in the world. If you're in China, your answer might be different from South Africa. In South Africa, it's fine. Ask Lorian about that also, who will tell you that, so there is a SARS regulation, there is a SARB set of regulations, there will be tax regulation in terms of income tax versus trading stock versus capital asset versus financial instrument. It's complex. And much like Uber, is that a taxi or is that public transport? It's neither. We need new definitions. This world will need new definitions to meet with these new tools. So far, the lack of legislation doesn't make it illegal. But how it is regulated in the future is subject to the evolution of that regulation. So not advice. Personally, I am providing for tax on all of this at the maximum rate.
Is it hackable, Willem? Can people steal your money?
No, you cannot hack the blockchain. You need 57 qubits of quantum computing to be able to break a blockchain. And we're not there. I think Google's on 27 or 21. And when we do get there, why won't we use the quantum computing to also do the encryption? But your wallet can be hacked. So careful of the keys to your wallet. Like with your physical fiat wallet, anyone can take money out of it, can pickpocket you. But you cannot hack the blockchain. The blockchain is unhackable at this stage.
What about criminals using the I can't say that word, anonymity of cryptocurrencies?
Anonymity. It is the same as diamonds and fiat currency. There's no difference. No difference. Blockchain and Bitcoin aren't evil because criminals use it, in the same way as diamonds and gold and money isn't evil because criminals use it. Criminals will always find a way. This is they will use it. They used it when we were bartering sheep.
Someone said, are we using Bitcoin to purchase products? So very much so. Hopefully we've showed you how you can even use Bitcoin on the Wealthe Migrate platform. In terms of where we are, how is Bitcoin valued? I think you went into that in quite a lot of detail, but ultimately, really, it's still sentiment, really, at the moment. I mean, let's be honest, and that's why we believe there's a real gap in the market for a cryptocurrency that's based on the intrinsic value of an asset that people understand.
Scott, can you imagine a future in which the properties are valued in Bitcoin and not in fiat? And how that changes that argument and all the complexities that come with it in this new world of digital currency. I'm really looking forward to that, and I think Wealthe Coin will play a role in ushering in that future.
Yeah, no, I very much agree with you.
Must now open his Bitcoin account to get paid in Bitcoin when he mows the lawn on the commercial real estate's lawn.
Correct.
Well, guys, I'm just going through
that changes the
What is,
that's the era, Michiel, in which we value dollars relative to Bitcoin, not the other way around.
Yeah, we've seen the first property doing that in Russia, actually, so it's definitely starting. But it's a question of the whole supply chain that must change, and that's why I'm pretty exciting with the guys that's really starting to ensure that normal retail transactions actually gets offered in Bitcoin instead of fiat currency, and then I think the change can be actually faster.
Yes.
There's one question here that I think we've answered, but again, your dividends and your returns are different per project depending on the project. Generally, if it's an income-producing asset, they pay it quarterly, and again, you would get the quarterly returns. And please understand that, again, you've spoken a lot, Willem, about pyramid schemes. The reason you're getting paid a quarterly return is the tenants are paying, quarterly rents, and that money is being distributed. And then obviously you're getting the capital growth in the building, and you're getting that on exit at the end. Someone said about choose a bank account. Guys, you're in control of your money. Like you can move money into what we have, the trading account online. You receive all your returns, and then you can distribute that to wherever you want in your world. But what we wanted to do is remove all the complications of bank account, tax, structure, and compliance, because it is all taken care of on the platform for you.
Yeah, and Scott, another point on that, it's actually costs you nothing to keep it on the platform. And like you said, we're really trying to work on the challenge to move the money at a very low cost, or frictionless as we call it. So people that just want to actually just store their money there, they can do that. And obviously the best option is to simply reinvest. So that option is available for everybody.
Well, I'm going to keep asking questions until we lose you. We've only got 2 minutes anyway. Bitcoin's at the highest price ever, give or take. Is it not time to wait for the market to correct for another big drop? I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that. I know that Kim and Melanie are sitting online, and they, at about $5,000, have been waiting for it to correct. So they've missed out a little bit, but you never know. It could correct and they can get in the market.
Unfortunately, Willem has left the building.
Okay, well, my bottom line is, guys, I bought in at 4,820, and then the market started to retreat, and I thought, oh shit, I've completely called the top of it, and then actually I managed to, obviously, but it's all short-term stuff, That's I think it's really important as a long-term. I would highly recommend getting involved, and it's not financial advice. It's the point that when you're actually involved in something, when you jump in the pool, it's far easier to learn to swim than when you sit on the sidelines getting advice from someone else and or reading a book. I think for the rest of the questions, we've probably run out of time. I'm not really sure here in terms of all the different questions, but we will personally get back to everyone with their questions. I really, really appreciate your time. Someone said sorry for being late. They were test driving a Tesla, so I'm deeply, what's the word called, jealous of that. But I think really, you know, for Kevin, thank you very much. To Michiel, thank you very much. To Willem, posthumously, thank you very much. And to all of you online, you know, it is 2 hours out of your day, whether it's early morning in America, you know, lunchtime in England and Dubai and South Africa, or evening in China and Australia and everything in between. We do very much value your time. For those of you on the recording, hopefully you've enjoyed it. Reach out to us. You've got all our contact details there. Including, you know, my contact details below here. And most importantly, let's communicate. As a community, we can only get stronger the more we collaborate, and the stronger we will all get. So thank you for your time. We look forward to suggestions as to how we can get better. We look forward to how we can add more value. And most importantly, we hope that today is another step in the right direction to solving the greatest challenge on the planet and empowering 1 billion people. And by doing that, you know, hopefully solving the wealth gap. And we believe that we're all on this purposeful journey. We welcome you to join us. And we can not only make a profit, we can have a purposeful impact. So thank you all. Have a good day and good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.